The impossible assignment. The void graveyard stretched endlessly before Captain Sarah Chen, a cosmic cemetery of twisted metal and shattered dreams. Thousands of derelict ships floated in the darkness, some human, others belonging to species that had vanished from galactic memory. The debris field spanned 3 light years in every direction, a monument to countless wars and forgotten civilizations. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the transport vessel that had brought her here, watching the wreckage drift past like metallic ghosts in the eternal night. 3 weeks ago, Fleet Command had given her an assignment that bordered on insanity. The Zarathi Empire was expanding, consuming star systems with their biomechanical fleet that adapted and evolved with each battle. Traditional warships stood no chance against their ever-changing tactics and weapons. Humanity needed something revolutionary, something the enemy had never encountered. They needed a miracle, and they expected Sarah to build it from this floating junkyard. The crew they assigned her consisted of rejects and troublemakers from across the fleet. Lieutenant Commander James Ortega had been demoted twice for disobeying direct orders, though both times his actions had saved lives. His tactical brilliance was matched only by his complete disregard for protocol. Engineer Maria Volkov had spent 2 years in military prison for allegedly sabotaging a fleet vessel, though she maintained she had prevented a reactor meltdown that would have killed thousands. The charges were eventually dropped, but her reputation remained tarnished. Dr. Caden Reyes represented perhaps the most controversial addition to the team. The xenobiologist had been studying captured Zarathi technology, conducting experiments that pushed ethical boundaries. His work had yielded remarkable insights into alien biomechanical integration, but his methods made even hardened soldiers uncomfortable. Then there was navigator Yuki Tanaka, who claimed she could hear the quantum echoes of dead ships, sensing paths through space-time that instruments couldn't detect. Most considered her insane, but her navigation success rate was unmatched. The team assembled in the hollowed-out hull of an ancient battlecruiser that would serve as their base of operations. The ship had been gutted centuries ago, its valuable components stripped away, leaving only the skeletal frame. Sarah watched her misfit crew explore their temporary home, each lost in their own thoughts about the impossible task ahead. They had 6 months to create a warship capable of standing against the Zarathi. Intelligence reports suggested the enemy would reach human space in 7 months. The margin for error was non-existent. Maria Volkov was the first to make a significant discovery. While examining the wreckage of an unknown alien vessel, she found an intact power core unlike anything in human databases. The crystalline structure pulsed with a faint blue light, responding to her touch with increasing intensity. When she connected it to a portable scanner, the readings defied conventional physics. The energy output exceeded theoretical maximums, yet the core remained cool to the touch. It seemed to draw power from subspace itself, creating energy from the quantum foam of reality. James Ortega focused on weapon systems, salvaging everything from human plasma cannons to exotic alien devices whose purpose remained mysterious. One particular find caught his attention: a weapon array from a race called the Voidlings who had supposedly transcended physical existence millennia ago. The weapons didn't fire projectiles or energy beams. Instead, they manipulated probability fields, causing target molecules to spontaneously disassemble. The technology was so advanced that human science could barely comprehend its basic principles. Dr. Reyes made perhaps the most disturbing discovery. Deep within the wreckage of a Zarathi scout ship, he found biological components that were still alive, dormant but responsive to stimulation. The organic circuits could interface with mechanical systems, creating a hybrid that combined the adaptability of life with the precision of machinery. His experiments showed that these components could learn and evolve, becoming more efficient with each use. The ethical implications were staggering, but the potential was undeniable. Yuki Tanaka spent her time in meditation among the debris, claiming she could feel the memories of the dead ships. She spoke of battles fought in distant galaxies, of technologies that bent space and time, of civilizations that had risen and fallen before Earth's sun was born. Her teammates initially dismissed her visions as delusions, but when she led them to a hidden cache of quantum processors that had been overlooked for centuries, they began to listen. The processors contained fragments of artificial intelligence from dozens of destroyed vessels, each holding pieces of tactical knowledge and technical specifications. As weeks turned to months, The impossible ship began to take shape. Sarah had decided early on that conventional design principles wouldn't work. Instead of trying to build a traditional warship with salvaged parts, they would create something entirely new. The hull was a patchwork of different alloys and materials, each section chosen for specific properties. Human titanium carbide armor plates were welded to sections of alien metamaterial that could shift between solid and energy states. The resulting composite was stronger than anything either civilization had produced alone. The power system Maria had developed defied every safety regulation in the book. She had linked the alien crystalline core to human fusion reactors and Zarathi bioenergy converters. The different systems shouldn't have been compatible, yet somehow they synchronized, each amplifying the other's output. The energy readings were so high that conventional sensors couldn't measure them accurately. The ship would have enough power to run weapons, shields, and engines at maximum capacity simultaneously, something no human vessel had ever achieved. James had integrated weapons from 17 different species into a unified combat system. Human kinetic weapons sat alongside alien disintegrators and probability manipulators. The targeting system used the salvaged AI fragments to predict enemy movements and adapt firing solutions in real time. Each weapon could be fired independently or in devastating combination attacks that no single defense system could counter. The arsenal was chaotic, unpredictable, and potentially unstable, but it was also incredibly powerful. Dr. Reyes had done the unthinkable, integrating Zarathi biological components into the ship's core systems. The organic circuits grew throughout the vessel like a nervous system, connecting every component and allowing instantaneous communication between systems. The ship could now heal damage automatically, rerouting power and resources to compensate for destroyed sections. It was alive in a way that made everyone uncomfortable, but it was also incredibly resilient. The breakthrough came when Yuki successfully communicated with the collective AI consciousness that had formed from the salvaged processors. The fragments had merged over time, creating a gestalt intelligence that remembered every battle, every victory, and every defeat. It called itself the Echo, a reflection of all the minds that had died in this graveyard. The Echo agreed to help them, seeing in their desperate mission a chance for redemption and revenge against those who had destroyed its component parts. 5 months into the project, long-range sensors detected something that turned Sarah's blood cold. A Zarathi reconnaissance fleet was approaching the graveyard, 2 months earlier than intelligence had predicted. 12 scout ships, each capable of destroying a human battlecruiser, were less than 48 hours away. The ship wasn't ready. Half the systems were untested. The weapons weren't calibrated and the shields had never been activated. They needed at least another month of work, but they had 2 days. Sarah gathered her crew on the bridge they had assembled from salvaged components. Through the viewports, they could see their creation floating in the darkness. It looked like a nightmare made real. A ship that shouldn't exist, cobbled together from the dreams and nightmares of dead civilizations. Sections glowed with alien energy, while others bristled with weapons that jutted out at impossible angles. It was ugly, chaotic, and absolutely magnificent. The crew worked without rest for the next 36 hours. Safety protocols were abandoned as they rushed to bring systems online. Maria pushed the power core beyond recommended limits, causing reality to warp around the ship. James loaded weapons that had never been tested, trusting the Echo's calculations. Dr. Reyes accelerated the growth of the biological components, feeding them energy until they spread throughout the entire vessel. Yuki meditated with the Echo, learning to navigate using quantum echoes and probability streams. Birth of a legend. As the Zarathi scouts entered sensor range, Sarah stood on the bridge of their impossible creation. They had decided to name it the Revenant, a ship risen from the dead to seek vengeance. The name felt appropriate for a vessel built from the corpses of 1,000 battles. The crew took their positions, each at a station cobbled together from different technologies. The interfaces were a mess of human touchscreens, alien neural links, and holographic displays that flickered between dimensions. The Zarathi fleet moved in perfect synchronization, their biomechanical ships pulsing with an organic rhythm that made them seem more like living creatures than vessels. Each scout was a kilometer long, covered in writhing tentacles that served as both weapons and sensors. Their hulls constantly shifted and adapted, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. They had destroyed dozens of human colonies, learning from each encounter, Evolving to counter every strategy humanity had developed, the lead Zarathi ship broadcast a message in perfect emotionless human speech. The translation was flawless but somehow wrong, like a machine trying to mimic emotion without understanding it. Unknown vessel, you will be catalogued and absorbed. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is illogical. Submit to integration. The voice carried an undertone of absolute certainty, the confidence of a predator that had never known defeat. Sarah opened a channel to respond, standing tall despite the fear coursing through her veins. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran ship Revenant. You want to catalog us? You want to absorb us? Come and try. We are humanity's answer to your evolution. We are chaos given form, impossibility made real. And we are your end. The Zarathi response was immediate and violent. All 12 ships fired simultaneously, beams of bioenergy that could dissolve molecular bonds lancing toward the Revenant. Sarah held her breath as the attacks struck their untested shields. Instead of the expected impact, something extraordinary happened. The hybrid shield system, powered by the crystalline core and modulated by the biological components, didn't just deflect the energy, it absorbed it, converted it, and fed it back into the ship's power systems. Maria laughed from her station, a sound of pure disbelief and joy. The shields are holding! No, they're doing more than that. Every shot they fire makes us stronger. The biocomponents are learning their energy signature and adapting in real time. The power levels are increasing beyond anything I imagined possible. James didn't wait for orders. He unleashed the Revenant's weapons in a display that would become legendary across the galaxy. Human railguns fired projectiles at percentages of light speed. Alien disruptors tore holes in the fabric of space itself. The probability manipulators caused sections of Zarathi ships to simply cease existing, their atoms deciding they would rather be somewhere else in the universe. The weapons fired in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully orchestrated by the Echo, each shot calculated to maximize damage and confusion. The first Zarathi scout ship died in seconds, its biomechanical hull unable to adapt quickly enough to the chaotic assault. It tried to evolve defenses, but each time it adapted to one weapon, 3 different types hit it from unexpected angles. The ship writhed like a dying animal before exploding in a burst of organic matter and twisted metal. The other Zarathi ships immediately began changing, their forms shifting to counter the weapons they had observed. But the Revenant's arsenal was too diverse, too unpredictable. Dr. Reyes monitored the biological components as they engaged in a form of warfare humanity had never seen before. The Zarathi ships were trying to infect the Revenant with biological viruses, attempting to take control of the organic systems. But the components he had integrated were from a dead Zarathi ship, already exposed to their attacks and immune to their standard infiltration methods. More than that, they were fighting back, sending their own adapted viruses that caused confusion in the enemy's biomechanical systems. Yuki navigated through space in ways that defied conventional physics. Using the quantum echoes, she could see probability streams, the possible futures branching out from each moment. She guided the ship through dimensions that existed between real space, allowing the Revenant to appear and disappear seemingly at random. To the Zarathi, it must have seemed like they were fighting multiple ships simultaneously, the Revenant existing in several places at once. The Echo spoke through the ship's communication system, its voice a harmony of thousands of dead AI systems. We remember you, Zarathi. We remember how you destroyed the Altarian Commonwealth. We remember the fall of the Vegan Confederacy. We remember every ship you absorbed, every civilization you consumed. But you made a mistake. You left us here to rot, thinking we were dead. Death was just the beginning of our education. The battle escalated as the Zarathi fleet attempted to adapt and overwhelm the Revenant through sheer numbers. They formed a sphere around the ship, firing from all directions simultaneously. But Sarah had trained for this moment. Even if the ship she commanded was unlike anything in the tactical manuals, she ordered Maria to overload the crystalline core, pushing it beyond any safe limit. Reality began to break down around the ship as it drew power from dimensions that shouldn't exist. The Revenant's response was devastating. It fired all weapons simultaneously in a spherical pattern, each weapon targeting a different ship with a different type of attack. Space itself seemed to scream as probability fields collapsed. Dimensions folded and matter converted to energy in violent eruptions. 3 more Zarathi ships died instantly, their adaptive capabilities overwhelmed by the sheer variety and intensity of the assault. The biological components of the Revenant grew stronger with each kill, absorbing data from the dying enemy ships and incorporating it into their own evolution. The remaining Zarathi scouts attempted to retreat, something unprecedented in their history. They had never encountered an enemy they couldn't adapt to, couldn't absorb, couldn't defeat through evolution. But the Revenant pursued them with a vengeance born from the memories of 1,000 dead ships. Yuki navigated through quantum space, allowing them to appear ahead of the fleeing enemies. James targeted their engines with probability disruptors, causing them to fail in ways the Zarathi couldn't predict or prevent. One by one, the scouts fell. Each death made the Revenant stronger as the biological components absorbed their remains, learning their secrets, adding their knowledge to the collective. Dr. Reyes watched in fascination and horror as the ship evolved during the battle, becoming something beyond his original design. It was no longer just a hybrid of human and alien technology. It was becoming a new form of life, a techno-organic entity that represented the combined vengeance of every species the Zarathi had destroyed. The final Zarathi scout attempted something desperate. It began to broadcast a signal back to their main fleet, trying to warn them about this impossible human ship. Sarah couldn't allow that message to be sent. She ordered all power diverted to a single weapon, one that Ortega had found but never tested. It was labeled in an unknown language, but the Echo translated it as Reality Anchor. When fired, it didn't destroy the Zarathi ship. Instead, it locked it in a single moment of time. Frozen between 1 second and the next, its message never sent, its existence suspended indefinitely. As the battle ended, the Revenant floated alone among the wreckage of 12 Zarathi scouts. The crew stood in silence, barely believing what they had accomplished. They had taken scraps and refuse, the discarded remnants of dead civilizations, and forged them into something that had defeated an enemy that had never known defeat. But more than that, they had created something new, a synthesis of technologies and philosophies that represented the best and worst of every species that had contributed to its construction. The Echo spoke one final time, its voice filled with something that might have been satisfaction. The debt begins to be repaid. The Zarathi will learn what we learned in death. Evolution is not their monopoly. Adaptation is not their strength alone. We are the proof that from destruction can come creation, from death can come life, and from despair can come hope. We are the Revenant, and we are just beginning. Sarah compiled her report to Fleet Command, knowing they would never believe it without the sensor logs and battle recordings. Humanity had asked for a warship to stand against the Zarathi. Instead, they had created something far more. They had built a legend from scrap metal and broken dreams, a ship that would become the stuff of nightmares for their enemies and hope for their allies. The Revenant was more than a warship. It was proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or tactics, but its ability to take the impossible and make it reality. The story of the Revenant spread across human space like wildfire. Within weeks, salvage crews descended on graveyards throughout the galaxy, seeking their own miracles among the wreckage. The Zarathi Empire, for the first time in its existence, hesitated in its expansion. They had encountered something they couldn't adapt to, couldn't absorb, couldn't defeat through evolution. They had encountered humanity's capacity to turn garbage into gold, defeat into victory, and death into rebirth.